Okay.
Got it. Okay. And of course, there you are dressed the way you're dressed, and here I am dressed the way I'm dressed. I guess we must live in different climates.
Yes, but I'm longing for fall.
Hmm.
I miss fall. Are you
I,
coming?
well, we have tickets, but you know, we've done one trip since COVID, and it was hell. Because of the airlines are such a mess, and and at one point I said so we were 8 hours in an airport waiting to take off. And I said to a woman at one point, your little children are adorable, but they're not masked and they're running around and shouting right near me. Could you keep them away? And oh, yes, definitely. But she couldn't, of course. So, that's what happens when you travel is you just don't have any control. So we'll have to see.
Where did you go?
We went to Florida, which I think we'd never go to again because we hate it so much. We're, trying not to take pleasure in Ian. um, but anyway,
Thank you
so
for
you're,
meeting with me.
yeah, yeah, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Um, how much time do you have?
I have time.
Okay.
It's, it's you're the one with a schedule today.
Okay. I think the Zoom call only lasts 45 minutes and then we can just get off
Oh,
and get back on
that's
again
fine. That's fine.
because our school stopped paying for the extended Zoom calls.
Oh, great. Oh, for God's sake.
um, okay, so let's
I
start.
mean, let's agree that anything incriminating either one of us says will be deleted from this.
Well, the whole video will be deleted after I get the
Okay.
transcript. And you
Okay.
get you get I the assignment follows the steps where I make the
Right, right, right,
written version and you approve it and
right.
so
I
yes.
just I just don't want either one of us to be careful about what we say, since this is our chance to catch up.
We've been here before.
Yeah.
I remember.
What do you mean?
Like making sure that we're okay with what we're saying not being
Right,
shared
right, right,
with
right,
others
exactly.
in the La Paz community so we can just expand that understanding for this
Right.
experience.
Well, yeah, right, exactly.
Well, usually when I read things, I underline so many things. And I've been like that my whole life. But when I read your book and when I looked back through it for this project, I had not underlined very much at all. And I reflected on why that was. And I felt it was very much, you're not very like one liner.
Uh-huh.
It's just the whole impact of the whole piece of the poem. Um,
Oh, nice.
so powerful to me.
Uh-huh.
Um, but my first question is actually about one of the few lines that I underlined,
Hmm.
um, which is on the first page.
Right.
When you write, well, that's a woman's weapon. No. Um, and so I wanted to ask you, it's been 14 years since you wrote that line. And how has your sense of that concept of a woman's weapon changed?
I, I just wouldn't say that anymore. Um, uh, it's famous. Men are aggressive and women attack themselves. That's a standard thing to say. Um, I just so that's what I was imagining, um, or that's what was on my mind. But I wouldn't say that anymore. I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't define a woman's weapon. I have this. I have. Let's say I was thinking about your questions, and I made a list here. I mean, it just seems to me that my feminism. I, it seems uh, not a useful thing to say in terms of advancing the cause. In other words, it's if that's the stereotype that uh, let's not reinforce it by repeating it. So I was thinking about what the feminist poems are in the new work,
Yeah.
and there's one that was actually called Feminist Poem.
Hmm.
It's now called Dating Late, and it's about I think I don't know if you remember it. It's about being in a restaurant with someone. Yeah. So I mean, it just makes the feminist point. Yeah, that was a lot of fun, but look what the rules are. Look who takes the initiative and who is there to receive it.
I'm calling it up.
But actually, another couple are there's the one about Picasso called Portrait of the Artist with Wife, and it's just sort of in a you know in a covert way saying this great man's achievement depended on having women organize and run and support his life.
Yes.
Um, and but I don't say that straight out. It's just I guess it's pretty clear.
Yeah, and I love the line. I just loved the line, if he feels like making love, but it's his
Right,
choice.
right, exactly.
He's the one who decides. And
It,
it's in parentheses, um, but it's so obviously like a knife, even though it's in parentheses.
right. So yeah, so I guess that I keep the knife in my own hand more these days rather than the position I was uh, in the earlier poem that you cite. And then the other feminist poem is the abortion poem
Yeah.
uh, that I call Right to Life, in which I take a covert swipe at um, my ex-husband. You know, so so it's aggressive.
Um, I I loved that one. I don't remember that. That's interesting that you say aggressive to me. That's not the feeling that I got from it. I felt like a sense of peace from it, to be honest.
Yeah. No. In terms of yes, and there's just one moment when the unborn child, the never to be born child, says, how would this have worked out for me? You, then, and him.
Yeah.
So there's a moment of aggression, um, but but in terms of feminism, the feminism is I mean, my feeling about abortion these days is people are constantly talking about, oh, this is a terribly complicated subject, and my feeling is not necessarily. In my case, it was perfectly clear that it would be nuts to have the baby. I arranged for a safe abortion, and I was nothing but relieved and pleased when it was over, and I've never regretted it for a second. I mean, people have all kinds of different responses to it, but my response, I think, is a whole lot more common than we allow for, which is not a problem.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like this sense of peace from it. I think that really comes out, that sense of
Good, good.
it's there, but there's no regret.
No, no.
Like, and everybody involved is the peace covers everyone involved in that
Oh,
story.
nice. Oh,
Yeah.
that's the nice, Amy.
Um, I also would pull the Listen Venus poem into this group.
Feminism.
Uh-huh. I love how you you speak directly to her, invite her over, complicate her. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would include that one. um, and it's interesting that the you said that the line that's a woman's weapon, no, like repeating it, and I read it first in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read it from a 2017 perspective, I read it as so tongue in cheek, sarcastic.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't read it as repeating, I read it as saying it to show.
That that's not the case.
Right.
Much better reading.
So it just is, I mean, the time, the context of the time.
Kind of to the time. I don't know. I mean, sometimes when I look back at my own work, I don't know for sure what was going on with me at the time. And so you may be right. I mean, not you may be right, but I mean, that may have been where it came from. I mean, I mean, it's, I wouldn't say it makes me cringe, but it's a little, I draw back from it a little bit now. So maybe it's, maybe, maybe I was meaning it the way you took it.
Um, can we transition to Lewis and Clark because they're my favorites?
Okay. Okay.
I've transitioned to these two men, but can you describe the project? I gave you in the question these two different
Right.
lines
Right.
about
Right.
them, and just if you could give the audience your own
Well,
description.
yeah. I mean, I keep, I keep changing how I'm doing it. I mean, um, it's really a long term project for a variety of reasons. One of which was, I think, I had a concussion last year, and so I couldn't do anything. And oh, you didn't know
I
that?
know I did not know that. What
Yeah, yeah.
happened?
I was playing tennis and I was running backwards and fell and conked my head. I'm fine, but I couldn't do anything for a long time. And so, and when I could, it was poetry. I mean, this project is a big thing, and I need to be ready to, to get my mind around it. Um, uh, and and then the poems just kept coming. So, so I'll get back to that when I can, or when they run out. I don't know, but um, but there's a whole lot that I've done on it already. But I mean, tell you um, another reason why it's taking uh, what another another I don't know what to say, but an issue for me writing this has been that these men, my main characters, Lewis, Clark, and also to a certain extent Thomas Jefferson, are completely ungraspable because they're so admirable and so awful at the same time. And just in terms of craft, in terms of how to handle that technically, um, I've I I keep I've kept not being able to do it the way I wanted to. I've I've found the answer. Um, so I mean I'm delighted with the answer that I've found, which I will not describe to you because the more you describe what you're doing to other people, the less you actually do it.
I totally
Um,
get it. Yes.
but I've solved that problem. Um, I mean, I just haven't liked the way I've seen any other people solve it or resolve it for them. So I've got my own way of doing it. And so this whole, this whole question, is it a poetry sequence? Is it an epistolary novel? Somehow I think is going to resolve along with that. But at the moment, I'm having too much fun writing poems to go back to it. But I can certainly talk about some of the questions that you asked if you want to stick with them.
Yeah, I want to add one more in though. I remember that you and I talked during the pandemic and how the pandemic for you was the space that you're in right now. And in some ways, it gave you longer time
Yeah,
to be in that space writing.
yeah.
Did that allow you to have the emotional and mental space to take on the large scope of Lewis and Clark? Is there a connection?
Uh, I wish, but my life it just never ends. And so it's still poetry because that can be fit into a corner here or a corner there. I mean, there are two kinds of people in my situation, and that is those who don't quite know what to do with themselves, and those who can't figure out why they're so incredibly busy, even though they're not teaching anymore. I mean, I just don't know how I ever found the time to show up and teach. Um, so, so the answer is sadly no.
um, I guess I also was wondering why you chose them because in there's a poem about the Peloponnesian War. That's
Right,
a historical event that could have been a large scope um,
right, right, right.
exercise. I'm wondering what it was about the two of them that made you want to spend more time with them.
Um, Hold on, I think I made some notes for myself. Um, well, a couple of things. Um, you know, in a way, just what everybody is attracted to. The adventure and the romance of crossing the country, and um, uh, the sense of um, the pretty you know fairly passionate attachment that I have to the landscape um, of the country, uh, and the idea of them in it, and with nothing between them and the landscape. Of course, that was rarely the case, but I mean, what was between them and the landscape were all these Native American tribes, 50 anyway, that they dealt with, who helped them and fed them and guided them and gave them directions, but sometimes the directions were, and then there's a tree with an owl's nest in it, so I mean, the idea of trudging your way across the continent looking for a tree with an owl's nest in it, um, uh, well, you suppose it's that tree, or is that an owl, or I mean, it just the issue, having them, the idea that they were making their way all by themselves, which of course was never true because they had, I don't know, 40 people, a supply train of 40 people or more. So the myth and the reality are quite different, but I was attracted by the myth, and which was at times true. At times they were putting their finger in the river and saying, "Well, it tastes like it's got a lot of minerals in it, so maybe it came from here." I mean, the idea of the unmediated uh, um, intimacy with the land um, uh, is what first got me interested. Um, I mean, like Thomas Jefferson, I'm an armchair traveler, which is to say, I'm fascinated but well, I mean, I did have an adventure phase of my life. My ex-husband and I had a sailboat, and that went into my what I wrote about Bernard Moitessier. It's called "The Miracle of My Freedom." And and we had adventures, which is to say, we had boating disasters because we didn't know what we were doing. Uh, um, so so that sort of gave me an adventurer identity. Uh, but I but but I'm actually a terrible traveler. I'm not good at improvising, and I'm not good at dealing with unideal, you know, uncomfortable circumstances. And as I say, that gives me a lot in common with Thomas Jefferson. So just as he, you know, vicariously participated through them, so did I. So do I. Um, but then the story turns out to have everything in it. Um, it has the Native Americans. It has uh, a black slave who was along. It has um, uh, Sacagawea, who was a 17-year-old girl with an infant, and the only woman, of course, on the trip, and her story. So, I mean, there's just, you know, as you know, as we look these days um, at America, we see um, uh, the story is mixed, and so uh, it's interesting for me to go deeper and deeper into those aspects of the story.
What was your research process like for this project?
Vast uh, and full of disappointments. I just followed, just went from one thing to the next, and but um, my research, whenever I'm doing something from research, involves a lot of rereading. So I'll read something and underline everything in it, and then not forget everything, but then I go back. Where was that?
Yeah.
So the research involves an awful lot of tracking down something that's in my mind uh, to find out exactly what was said.
Give me an example of what a disappointment in research is.
Oh well, um, that's an interesting question.
Like in the process or in what you discovered?
Well, of course, there was all this disappointment in them that I was
Yeah.
telling you about. Terrible, terrible stuff. But um, but just books that weren't interesting or that weren't, didn't tell me what I wanted to know. That I had a hypothesis and it didn't work out, or just dull. I mean, Lewis and Clark is an industry. Uh, the books just keep coming.
None like yours.
Well, thank you.
um, yeah. Do you will you publish excerpts of it, or are you gonna wait for the whole?
No, because I keep changing my mind.
Yeah.
So if I publish excerpts, I'm committed to something.
Yeah.
Um, although, although that might be a way to go, is a way to stop changing my mind, is to just get something in print and then have to follow it. So that's interesting.
um, I think that I
Amy, what did you like about it? I mean, I gather that you really liked it. So tell me.
I think partly because I was a product of the myth only. I was
Mm-hmm.
born in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
And so my whole childhood was the myths of everything. And it wasn't until college that Howard Zinn started the whole curtains coming down and unmasking of that wasn't until then. And so to have the myth unmasked in a very it has such a your tone is it's so unique to you. It's so humanizing. There's so much empathy for all humans in every line, but it's also so funny. And so to have such awful such awful realities. Well, I mean, you identified that contrast, the admirable elements of
Right.
the past versus the atrocities. Um, to have the line that you were able to walk
Mm-hmm.
of being funny and poetic without causing any disrespect. Like it's almost like the way that you bring poetry and humor to the story um, gives it even giving it even more respect. That you're telling it in such a way that shows that this the story of them and everything that it reveals about the
About imperialism and genocide.
yeah, and the path that I mean how it all connects to what we're seeing now.
Right.
it,
Right.
it makes it so accessible for people
Right.
to understand those connections that everything that we see now um, comes from all these systems that have been in place for hundreds of years, put in place sometimes by one white man who had a whim. And then all these years later, we're seeing the results of this. Um, it makes it accessible in a way that textbooks or opinion columns or judgment
Right. Right.
and
Right.
all those the talk shows and all like there's no agenda
Well,
except
because
to
you
tell the
because
story
you
with heart.
because you're either pro or con, in a blog.
Right. It removes that. It's very anybody can. I feel like it's a way for everybody to learn a piece that all the noise sort of shuts out from wherever they are.
Wonderful.
There
Wonderful.
are silos that we're living in because of the algorithms of our news feeds. It could
Right.
give us a way out of that, and wherever we are. Um, I guess that's
That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to say, Amy. Do you know what I gave? I mean, do you know what I gave you?
I have it. Do you want me to open it up?
I would really like to see what I gave you, but um, I mean, because as I say, it was at one phase then, and it's at such a different phase now. Um, I'll tell you. I mean, this does open an area of real uncertainty because you like poetry and you read poetry, but a lot of people just don't. A lot of people with literary sensibilities do not read poetry and and suffer from poetry anxiety, and so I've been getting the poetry out. I've been making it more and more, uh, almost entirely prose, um, because uh, because if it's partly poetry, there's a tiny readership. So I've found ways to do what I do in the poetry part I found other ways to do it. Um, it makes me sad because I would like it to be a hybrid uh, and go back and forth, but I don't. I don't think I'm going to do that.
The I'm debating whether to. Oh, well, I think I can access it pretty quickly, so we can stay on the topic. Or jumping to another question. Let's see.
I mean, that what you say is exactly what I want.
Yay.
Uh, you know, to deconstruct without the deconstruction being the point. To have it be,
Yeah.
to have it include both my affection and admiration and my um, dismay.
Okay. You sent me 13 pages. And actually, it's 12 pages. I guess I'll share my screen with you.
Well, is it? I sent it on email.
It's a document called Amy 2.3.20.
Well, why don't you just send it back to me and I'll have a look.
Okay.
But as I said, there's this sadness of letting go of poetry as part of it.
We have 7 minutes left in this call, so why don't we just end it? I'll send this email and then we can get back
Okay,
on the call,
sounds good.
and I won't be distracted
Sounds good.
again. There we go. Okay. Did you get the email?
I don't know. I don't know what happened exactly. Hold on. Amy, I have so many questions for you. For instance, I got the email with the Lewis and Clark
Perfect.
page,
Okay. That's all I sent.
I believe. Well,
You
I'll
can
check
ask me
up on.
some questions.
Okay. Um, how's the program?
It's great. I
Wonderful.
wasn't sure what to expect
Uh-huh.
because I knew I had to do something that was all online.
Yeah.
And this one kept coming up as the highest ranked fully online program, but I didn't know what that meant. Was it really going to be quality, or was it
Right.
the highest of the not such high quality?
Right. Right.
But I'm
Yeah.
only taking one class, which was very wise. I originally registered for two.
And
Um,
what's it? What's the class?
it's called Poetry Workshop.
Hmm.
Um, but I feel I feel appropriately placed. I don't, yeah, it's a nice group. There's 8 students in the class, and I don't know if I had, um, like consciously thought this, but I think I had assumed that entering, I would be sort of in a cohort of new students and follow the coursework in order. But it's not like that. And so there's just a series of required courses that you take, and you can take them in any order when they're offered. And so there's people in this workshop who are in their final semester of the MFA. And then there's me, I think one other, who is the first class we've taken in the program, and then everywhere in between. So it's a nice mix. And I really appreciate the professor's philosophy, um, just sort of very um, she wants us all to have a very broad perspective, and is doesn't want to be anyone, isn't like ego driven, wanting to be people's one poetry mentor, and wants us to.
Mhm.
When I told her about you and our experience, that was her response, at how so important to reach out and have a variety of
Great.
mentors. And her feedback is very specific and generous, and the philosophy of the course really is not trying to change anybody's style. Um, so I feel very comfortable. Feel like it's in my zone of proximal development.
Wonderful.
um,
Wonderful.
yeah,
And do you like the other people?
yes, it's a very, very wide range of personalities and strengths. So it's been fun. And it's interesting to see how our personalities come out in we don't have any calls like this. It's all written.
Hmm.
And when we submit our poems, we record ourselves saying them, but otherwise I don't see them or hear them.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So
So you don't get feedback from them?
I do, but only written feedback. We don't have Zoom classes.
Uh-huh. I wonder why not.
Well, it ranges in the course. A lot of the courses in this program are like that because it's really for people who are not full-time students and have jobs, and it's hard to um, if the class was at 2 in the afternoon, I wouldn't be able to go.
I see, I see, I see. Okay. Okay.
So she gave very clear expectations about how our feedback is, and gives us feedback about how we're providing feedback, and had a one-on-one meeting on Zoom with each of us, and talked specifically about how she wants us to be interacting with each other, and I really appreciated that. And
Do you like her poetry?
I've read very little, but yes.
Hmm. You
um,
like what you read?
yeah,
Hmm.
and I'm really in a period of writer's block, um, mainly time based, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm grateful for, I mean, I have so much that I've written over the past 2 years.
Hmm.
So I'm submitting, I think I'm supposed to be submitting things that I'm currently writing to this workshop, but I'm finding, I'm trying to let go of supposed to in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm finding, I'm bringing back ones that I'm happy,
Hmm.
very happy to have workshopped and want to revise.
Hmm. And school?
Um, my particular job actually has totally changed. I'm not in the classroom anymore at all. I am one of 3 instructional coaches. So
Meaning?
I work with 13 teachers, um, training them how to teach. Last year, I had 6 teachers that I worked with in that way, and I was still teaching one class. I still had 7th grade English, and this year they hired a full-time middle school English teacher who's wonderful, thank goodness. Um, and I just work with the teachers. And I never thought I would like it. I mean, if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be out of the classroom in 5 years, I would have never, ever
Hmm.
believed it. But I do. I really enjoy watching the teachers
Hmm.
learn and grow, and I feel helpful
Hmm.
without having to. I don't really have to plan for it because of all these years of experience. Pretty much anything
Right,
they ask me, I don't have to do much
right, right,
planning,
right,
and then I
right,
go home and I don't have grading to do. So it's
right, right.
for this stage of my life, it's good.
Hmm. Interesting.
A good match. And
Well, I mean, that makes sense because people cycle through La Paz, and so there's always people who need to be brought up to speed.
yes, La Paz as a whole is not. It's not. It's not being its best self right now. Did you know that they opened another campus? They got massive funding from
From who?
a billionaire, in our in
What?
our in our cave of in our cone of secrecy here, it was the CEO of LinkedIn moved to Costa Rica and wanted a school for his children,
What?
but he lived too far from La Paz, so he wanted them to be in La Paz.
What?
He funded
What?
the building of an entire like second La Paz, an hour away. um, which gave Abel this new project working with billionaires. Um, but it really, all of the energy and all of the love and all of the everything has been given to them. So it's been,
So I can say this, I just can't say who the billionaire is.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it's actually right here in Liberia. It's very close to my house. And so everybody was saying, "Oh, great, Amy, you can, you'll." When it first started, "Oh, great, you'll be the director of that one." Um, but they have really, they don't want me in leadership, um, which is
I don't know what to. I mean, it just feels like there should be something I can do about this.
um, so. But anyway, I said absolutely not. You know, I've been the work of starting something from zero
Mm-hmm.
is not something I'm interested in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spent 8 years forming relationships with these families and these colleagues, and so I didn't want to go for any purpose. But that has been a very interesting, frustrating dynamic.
I mean, well, I mean, we should turn the recording off, but my question is, what is their problem with you?
Um, it's very strange. I don't know. Um, I think there's a lot of underhanded things that happen that I, when I am aware of them, I have called them on it, and um,
I see.
I think I provide a moral compass, Linda, that they don't want.
I get it. I get it.
And it's sad. I think that the all. I mean, my personal. I'm going to pause the recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
um, okay. So switching gears again. I
Yeah.
like.
Okay.
I love the line about your father. It was easier to love a homeland. Um, and then the connection between him and Noah that you make in the new
Right.
manuscript.
Right. Right. Right.
Can you share with me about your relationship with him and how if he impacted your writing?
Oh, well, um, he he too liked to just talk with Patsy and me, yap 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 yap, and um, I mean there was he did not. Uh, he wasn't exactly raising us. My mother was raising us. He was just enjoying us, and that was it was a pleasure to be the thing he enjoyed. But so in terms of my writing, he was a literary person. I mean, he that wasn't his profession. As I said, he was a foreign service officer, but I mean, he was a lawyer and then a foreign service officer. But he was always reading, and he would come into my room and say, "Listen to this," and read me something. And usually it was funny in some way. And I would grasp it no matter what level it was because of transmission. Because if he was enjoying it, I was enjoying it. So I mean, basically, pleasure. He spread the pleasure of um, uh, of, of language and of reading. And it, you know, it seems to me that and also, I mean, he wasn't, I was asking, I told my sister that you had this question, and I said, what can you say about him? And she said, well, she thought a long time, then she said he was unmannered, meaning he wasn't coming on as who he wanted anyone to think of himself as. Um, so that was a pleasure, and I think definitely affected the way I talk. I mean, I appropriated his ways of being with language, but also the way I teach, which is to say that it's entirely about pleasure and each other, rather than about credentialing yourself in some way or understanding something that you need to know. Um, uh, so so it feels. I mean, it feels really good that this was my legacy and I'm able to pass it on to other people. I
Like
mean,
Noah.
what?
Like Noah.
Well, to some extent. No, I'm thinking about my students.
Oh, okay.
Uh, I wish Noah, I wish Noah were a student of mine. I have a lot I'd like to pass along, but yeah, but you got to sit still for it, and you can't ask that of a family member. um, but anyway, so he was great. He was just great.
Have you totally retired from teaching now, or?
Well, no, I keep meaning to go back, but I do not want to teach in a mask, and I do not want to teach online, and I do not want to get their damn diseases. I mean, I've always in the past uh, caught whatever they've got, and I mean, okay, so we're past the worst of it, and you're not going to die from it, but I just don't want to get it. So, um, I mean, your story is one of many stories I've heard about how horrible it is.
Yeah.
So when this is, I mean, will this ever be thoroughly over, and will I still want to teach them? Don't know. I think so. I think yes to both.
Do you teach poetry writing or?
No, no, I don't have the patience for it. Um, uh, and also, it just feels like what I'm here to do is show people how to read deeply, not not how to write.
Um,
I mean, it seems to me that you need to um, to hold everything. All your critical remarks need to be held in the context of approval and affection. Um, and and so when I've taught creative writing, I just spend too much energy trying to make sure that's happening, and trying to create the right atmosphere. Whereas when I teach literature, it just seems to happen automatically.
oh, I love that line.
What?
That everything needs to be
Oh,
held in a context of how did you phrase it? Approval and
approval and affection.
affection. Yeah, that's teaching right there.
Yeah.
um, I do want to. Maybe I'll ask question 5, which is about the scarlet underpants.
Oh.
Thinking about reading closely.
Uh-huh.
Tell me about this simile at the end of this poem called Sound System. I love
Well, that's something else I've thought twice about. Um, I mean, the sound system is about, that the public experience of music sometimes doesn't work for me, but the private one does. And so, um, it's about having a private secret. Um,
it.
uh, and so I gave it a sexual flip at the end.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know whether I'm of two minds about whether that was the way to go.
What would another direction have been?
I no, I don't feel like I have another direction. I need I need something that says this is a a highly pleasurable secret. Um, but but whether that sort of gesture in the direction of sexual pleasure um, is was the right one to make. I don't know because it's a little distracting from it's such a splash at the end that I'm not sure it's the right way to end that poem.
Hmm. I might steal that as a writing exercise for one of my classes. Think of all the metaphors you can for a highly pleasurable secret. Hmm.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, if somebody comes up with a good one, when I publish the collected works, I'll change it to if you can get a better one.
Um, okay, now I want to talk to you about two other men, Yeats and O'Hara.
Oh yeah,
Um, I love this quote that you have here
from Tony.
from Tony Hoagland,
Oh my God, isn't
um,
that great?
calling you a female poet in the style of O'Hara, and then you have a
Wonderful.
poem
Right,
in
right, right.
there to O'Hara, and he shows up a few times, and Yeats shows up in both collections. So it just made me fascinated about your relationship with them and their work.
I don't have that much of a relationship to Yeats. And in fact, sometimes I read a poem of his and think, well, I like this when I was in college, but I don't like it now. Um, uh, I just, it seems kind of accidental that I have a lot of his lines in my head, just, left over from, as I say, from college. Um, but so here's a line of his that seems to illuminate some of my feelings about O'Hara. Yeats says, a line will take us hours, maybe. Yet if it does not seem a moment's thought, our stitching and unstitching has been naught. Do you follow that? Shall I read it again?
Yes.
A line will take us hours, maybe, but yet if it does not seem a moment's thought, our stitching and unstitching has been naught.
Oh, that's
So
fabulous.
yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, what I love about O'Hara is that you don't think it those lines took him an hour's thought. That they feel that there's a kind of freedom in his work. Um, uh, and that's what I love and admire.
That makes me understand uh, Tony's quote about you. I feel like I could definitely say the same about yours.
Oh, good, thank you. Um, that that I mean, there's a Zen ethic of doing something all at once. That you sit and you meditate, and then you stand up and and you and with a brush you make a circle. And I mean, the idea of instantaneity and spontaneity that comes out of being fully present, uh, as opposed to as opposed to um, reworking things. And and I uh, and some of what I write really is, really does come instantaneously, and some of it stitching and unstitching to make it look like a moment's thought. Um, but but I really my own aesthetic is um, uh, I just feel claustrophobic when I'm in the presence of language that feels really reworked.
I like that image. I am deathly claustrophobic. Well, so that even just hearing that word is so
Uh-huh.
visceral for me. And I've never heard it applied to
The poetry.
language. I love it.
I mean, it's an aesthetic. It's got to do with the relationship between the reader and the writer. Which I want to be mutual and conversational, and as if we're as if we're in touch, not as if I'm on stage performing. Yeah. So, I mean, when you talk to someone you trust to be following what you're saying, you're not um, embroidering and elaborating.
That actually connects exactly to another one of the questions that I sent you.
Which is,
Number 7, where you write, you have the line, "Oh, everything reminded me delightfully of someplace
oh,
else,"
right.
and
Oh, Amy,
and
yeah.
um, that swinging feeling from topic to topic, but it all connects back together is so it has such the feel of that conversation that you're talking about,
Right,
sitting down with
right,
someone who you trust to be able to keep up, to
mhm,
follow you, to
right,
know that
right, right.
your brain is swinging but also looping back.
Mhm,
And it carries that feeling of trust with it. And I hadn't thought about it like that as a conversation between people who
mhm,
trust each other to keep up with each other. Um, I
mhm.
really like that. My question that I wrote was how does your brain work as you write, and did it feel different with Etsy and Love? Um, Maybe you've answered that a little bit, but did it feel different with the 2 books, or changing over time?
No, I mean, I think I have. Well, wait, there was something, Amy. I just loved what you said about you know swinging from monkey bars, but coming back at the end. That's just wonderful. That's I love being read that way. Um, I guess my feeling is, there's some poetry these days that's so associative that you have no idea where it's going or where it's been, that every line changes the subject. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Um, it's impossible. And it feels to me that to have a good relationship with your reader, I mean that too turns into a performance. It's like you can just watch me go,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to if you care about the person you're talking to, you wanna put it in something where they can have it too, where it's not just your mind, sparking in one direction and then in another. And so we need to stick to some kind of a point so that we can stay together. Um, so it feels to me like trying to have it both ways.
Full disclosure, I think
Yeah.
now that I have to, I can't take credit for the monkey bars and the hopscotch terms, because I sent a poem to a friend of mine last year, and that was the response that they sent. That
Mm-hmm.
I called it my pinball brain,
Hmm.
and they responded saying it felt more like monkey bars. So I need to cite my source.
That's great.
But that's
That's
how,
great, and I think that's true of your poetry.
but it actually was a real conversation. Um, it was,
What?
I mean, it didn't even start as a poem. It just started as a,
Yeah.
oh, hi, good morning email. And then it just sort of, as I kept writing, it developed into a poem. Um,
Well, let me see it.
I will send it to you.
Yeah, please do.
Um, but it felt very, but it actually was a conversation, which, or meant to, be started conversation and very much included a specific audience, which connects to the feeling that all of your work has. Um, it actually won. It didn't win anything. It got longlisted for a prize, and it felt
Wonderful.
very validated for the Fish Publishing Prize, Fish Poetry.
Don't know it, but
But it was validating to think that putting out something just so from my brain that
yeah.
works like that could be
Yes, yes, yes.
appreciated.
Wonderful, Amy. Wonderful.
um, uh, Turning to something not wonderful, can we talk about national disgrace?
Yes, yes.
Okay. My other question.
I know you said has my attitude changed, and my feeling is, I had no idea at the time what a national disgrace was. I mean, this is so much worse. But of course, that was the war in Iraq, which is an enduring national disgrace. However awful things are now, that was one of our worst moments. But I mean, what can I say? There seems no limit to it.
And it seems to fill more, it fills more of your space of your new manuscript.
Well, it's on everybody's mind.
Yeah. Um, Say their names. Is that the title? Specifically.
Right,
That just
right,
stands
right.
out as a real standout in your collection. Um, Something that has been said so many times and you found new new ways to impact people with it. So that
Yeah,
was
well, I was thinking about that. You know, it's that the whole issue of names interested me, not just the you know, the tragedy of George Floyd. So I mean, so there's a part of a part that's just that's balanced, and then I come to the part that's disastrous
Mhm.
at the very end.
uh, that like the connecting of it all throughout history is with the um, and the line from Monica Lewinsky, no one suggested he change his, and
Yeah,
like
but
all
now
the
there's a moment of feminism.
yeah, um, yeah,
Isn't that great?
yes. Um, yeah, I guess there really isn't anything else to say about the national disgrace except it's just the endless shock of it all.
Yeah.
That you think you can't be
Oh,
whiplashed one more time, and then you are.
yeah.
Um, I think I just have one more question about structure, Linda,
What's that?
which was the last one. You have four sections in At Sea and Love, and is it chronological, or how did you decide how to organize the poems?
I have no answer to that question.
Really?
Well, okay, I'll say something.
I love that.
It's by no means it's by no means chronological. Um, I think I think it's about trying to make each section have its own rhythm, you know, rising and resolving. Um, uh, but it's not thematic and it's not chronological. It's just it's just um, it's just pacing, I think.
Well, and they don't have titles.
The
Sections.
sections, no.
Right. So I mean that speaks to your trust in the reader, um, to understand or grow into an understanding of that rhythm, which speaks to what we were just talking about. That you're in a
Oh,
conversation
nice.
with your
Thank you.
reader,
That's a nice.
um, that they don't need to be told the theme of this section is.
Right, right.
They can feel it,
Well,
and it can speak to them in the way that it speaks to them.
yeah, because it's not thematic. I mean, I mean, sometimes things will intensify and sometimes they'll, um, you know, be funny and then serious. I don't know. I mean, it's about rhythm and not theme.
I'm gonna read it again with that.
Okay, okay.
I almost said I'm going to read it with my eyes closed to feel the rhythm, and then I realized how ridiculous that sounded. But that's what I
Thank
mean.
you.
I'm going to try to
Right.
read it with that sense behind it. Um, how is the? Oh, I also wanted to ask you about the title change.
Um, okay, this is just between us.
Okay, stop the
I,
recording.
I think, yeah.
What is the publishing process like at this point?
What is the what?
Publishing process? I'm new. I don't know anything about this part of the
Oh,
business. What do you do?
what do I do? I, I mean,
How does
it,
it work?
um, what I have to say about literary publishing is that it's in terrible, terrible shape. These major publishers consolidated, and so there's fewer and fewer of them, and and they are less and less willing to take chances on literary work because that doesn't sell. And I mean, they do sell what they call literary fiction. It's generally not particularly literary, but poetry is a really real stepchild, even under those circumstances. And the small presses are incredibly underfunded um, and precarious. So the national situation is pretty bad. But in terms of I mean, there's a website called Submittable,
Mhm.
and
Use that.
you use it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you use.
And for your publishing of this book, what are your next steps?
Well, there's a couple of publishers who are, where it was almost chosen or where they're still considering it or this or that. But if not, there's a publisher in California that I'm pretty sure will want it. And I'll do that in the not too distant future because I need to get this off my desk since I seem to be writing the next collection.
Oh,
um, so, but this has to appear so that it doesn't, so that it's not hanging over my head.
is the poem about Steve in this manuscript, or is it going in the next one?
I'm not sure.
When you say it,
Do you have any advice?
it
The
was.
one of
Uh,
giving himself advice?
yeah, that one.
Uh-huh. Well, what do you think?
I have met him a couple times, so it was so fun for me to picture the two of you together with this happening. I found it delightful.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, what does it seem to belong in this collection or?
I'm gonna have to reread it with my eyes closed, feeling the rhythm,
Okay.
and I'll let you know.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Was he involved in that? Were you with him writing
Oh
that?
yeah, no, I mean we were reading Catullus. I read a Catullus poem to him in which Catullus, admonishes himself this or that, And then I said, well, what would you say to yourself? And he said a lot of that, which I just wrote down. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And I wrote it down and fixed it up and made it into a poem. And then I gave him the advice that I wanted to give him, that I wanted to give him.
The part about I forget the names of the people, but the people he included in his legal arguments.
Danny and the Juniors.
Yeah. Oh, that was the best line.
Oh, good, good, good.
Laughed out loud. Great. Well, I will. I'll let you know after I read it all again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, don't forget to send me
Yeah.
the poem where you're hanging from the monkey bars.
Okay.
I mean, that is true of your poetry. That it does go from thing to thing like that. But not in the infuriating way that a lot of contemporary poetry does. I mean, it's what I like about the way you do it, and what I hope to be doing myself is you know doing it at the pace that your mind does it, not at top speed, or at the pace that your mind would do it in a conversation,
Mhm.
as we've said.
I'm happy to hear you say that about the infuriating. How some poetry can be infuriating. I don't let myself feel that yet because I feel too not competent enough to say that. But you've given me freedom to. It's okay to be frustrated by things.
I mean it. Um, um, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's presenting itself as disruptive, whereas in fact, in my opinion, it is slavishly following a current convention. That it's not surprising. I mean, if you're trying to surprise somebody every half second, it's not surprising. It's just okay. We know that in another half second there'll be another surprise. I mean, I think surprise is crucial to poetry. Um, but but surprise has to come because something unexpected happens. Whereas if you expect this, um,
Mhm.
this constant uh, these constant explosions of form and meaning, then nothing unexpected is happening.
You taught me that about the unexpected back in the early days when we were doing haiku with Sophie's class.
And what did
You
I
taught
say?
me about the turn in the
Oh,
haiku and the
right, right, right.
surprise, and I had never known that.
Interesting you mentioned haiku because I just I was reading a bunch of Japanese death poems, which are basically haikus, and I just wrote a bunch myself, which I'm calling 13 ways of writing a Japanese death poem. So the haiku and surprise is very much on my mind.
Will you send it to me when you're done?
Oh, sure, I'd love to show it to you.
Um, well, our call is about to be ended by Zoom.
Okay, let's do it.
A few more minutes.
So
I
that,
only have 5 more minutes, but I do want to just want to alert you.
okay.
Um, and I have to go pick up my child.
Now, was I supposed to send you anything else?
Just the
No.
haikus.
Okay, and you're gonna send me your poem, and you have sent me what the Lewis and Clark read.
Oh yeah, I would be so interested to know what you,
Yeah,
because that was February of 2020.
yeah.
So I
Um,
want to know what you think when you see what it is.
well, I'll be a little heartbroken because I was committed to that stuff, and now I feel I need to do it a different way. So we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. Okay, well, this was great.
Thank you
Absolutely,
so
so glad.
much.
So glad we had this excuse.
Yes. And next steps, I type this up and polish it, and then
Mhm.
I send it to
Okay.
then I send it to you for approval.
So, I mean, has this? I mean, it seems to me a, an original thing for an MFA program to say here's part. It's interesting.
It's fascinating, and it's I did tell her that it gives such a depth to her workshop, and
Mm-hmm.
she believed it could teach us so much about craft and thought,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm really happy.
Wonderful, and it's all. Go ahead.
Well, the final step of it is that I send it out to, I have to send 5 query letters to publisher, to journals.
Mm.
So I will want your advice about where to
Okay.
potentially find an audience, depending on
Okay.
where.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll be thinking about
Yeah.
it. Mm,
Thank you so much. And I will
great.
talk to you soon.
Till then.
Bye.
Okay.